Hello, my name is Joseph Aguilar. I am from the Foothill FFA chapter, and I'd just like to thank you all for giving me this opportunity to speak. And I would like to just start my story by bringing you all to the summer between my 8th grade year and the start of my freshman year in high school. Now, at that time, I didn't really have much of an idea of what I wanted to pursue as far as high school, what clubs or classes I wanted to take. Luckily, my brother was involved in the FFA program in our high school, and he had great success with that. So I thought I should possibly give it a shot and see where I would go with it. And little did I know, from making that simple decision, I was able to take part in numerous community service projects, be a part of numerous public speaking opportunities that granted me this confidence to come and speak today. And without this program, and without the Agriculture Academy at my high school, I would not be the individual that I am today, and the one to come and advocate for agriculture itself, an industry that is very important in our state and in our world. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Louis Brown here today as a product of this organization. I came from Hanford FFA 20-some years ago, almost 30 years ago. And so I think it's important to know that the alumni that exist from this program and those who have gone on not only in agriculture but really throughout the country. There are doctors, there are lawyers, there are mayors, there are former congressmen. Cal Dooley comes to mind, who is a former state FFA officer who got his beginnings with leadership development, public speaking, parliamentary procedure from agricultural education, from Future Farmers of America. Those 78,000 students that are in this organization today, they're not all going to go into farming, but they're going to go into business. They're going to go into school and education. They're going to be parents. They're going to be constituents. The leadership skills that students are learning in this program today benefit California as a whole. 78,000 students benefiting, and if you think of the return on investment from $4.1 million that the state will receive from that, this seems like a no-brainer. I think it's been said, I think most of us agree, and Mr. Sala said it, local control for education funding makes sense, but this is a statewide program that has state requirements. And in order for this program to continue to succeed, in order for it to continue to reach the thousands of students it'll reach, we need those statewide standards. So this is not the categorical that we've heard about in the past. This is an incentive-based program that benefits the entire state of California, and as a product of the program, I urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, Jim Ashwan, and I represent the California Agricultural Teachers Association. And it's important to make a couple technical points. First of all, you heard information today that this is a categorical, and it's not. That this is a matching incentive grant-based program. Districts are not required to participate in it. They can offer no ag program. That's their local choice. They can offer an ag program that doesn't apply for any incentive grant money because they don't want to meet any standards. That's their choice. There are districts that are very large that receive a very modest amount of money because they choose which standards they want to meet and get a corresponding incentive to match those. There are other programs who become more committed and make a local choice to meet more of the standards and receive greater incentive grant money as a result. The local control in this program is on the front end. This is not a categorical entitlement that you just get because you have an ag program. That ag program has to perform. There's a nexus, a connection between funding and performance. That's important. It's also very important to single out the idea that California has a compelling interest here. We are the leading ag state with incredible challenges that we're going to face over the next 30 and 40 years. These young people behind us have to be equipped to meet those challenges. And so to suggest that in this oasis that we've been born into, and that we live in called California, that we would consider cutting ag education is ridiculous. The final point in closing, you did note, I hope, the comment that this is above the local control funding formula. So when this goes into the base, when local control funding formula is enacted, the hold harmless stops, and the target is not adjusted for the districts that currently get incentive grant. This is a defunding. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Andrea Fox with the California Farm Bureau. We represent nearly 80,000 members in California. 30,000 of those are farmers and ranchers, men and women who grow the great abundance of food and fiber that California so enjoys. Not just California, but the whole United States and many parts of the world. Agriculture is important. Career tech education, agricultural career tech education is vital to the health and strength of our economy and the continuation of agriculture here in this state. As a mom, I understand very well the importance of a strong academic foundation for all of our students, but I also understand very well how career tech education, the agricultural career tech education, you marry the two because one provides the knowledge, the other provides hands-on experience and knowledge to put into practice what they've learned in school. It would do our students, both now and in the future, a great disservice to roll this funding into the local control funding formula and thereby make schools choose whether or not they can have those kind of programs because they have to fund something else. So we sincerely, the California Farm Bureau sincerely urges you to recommend that the funding for the Ag Incentive program continue and also career tech education continue for California students. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Could you all line up closer to the mic so? I'm sorry, I thought you were all there.
Are you going to ask for comments about the SSP program as well, or is this the time to make those?
This is the time for SSPs also, so please.
Good morning. My name is Chris Vetrano. I'm vice principal at Windsor High School, which is in the wine country just north of Santa Rosa. I'm here this morning to represent the 67 high schools in California that have begun to create SSP programs and want to bring them to fruition. I ask you to keep the SSP programs out of the LCFF. I believe I bring a unique perspective to you today, and that perspective is both historic and absolutely hands-on. I have 22 years of SSP experience. Coincidentally, this year is the 20th anniversary of one of the first SSP programs in Sonoma County. In 1994, when computers were just beginning to take over the world, a group of teachers founded the ArtQuest Academy with an SSP grant. Since then, countless of art, digital media, animation, video, music, and dance students have gone on to become outstanding professionals in their fields. To this day, the ArtQuest program draws hundreds of inter-district requests. I am positive that none of this would have happened without the SSP grant in 1994. When I came to Windsor High, I was involved in two more SSP grants, the Digital Media Academy 12 years ago and the Pre-Med Corps 8 years ago. Digital media students have gone on to work for Apple, Nike, Google, and Pixar. The Pre-Med Corps attracts students who want to become doctors, but serves all medical professionals such as nurses, X-ray technicians, EMTs, firefighters, and even police officers. This year, we had 74 more requests than we had room to admit. If you meet these students, they would wax eloquent about the twice-a-year shadows they do at local hospitals. Students have observed countless surgeries, births, and even a death in the emergency room. If you collapse this program into the LCFF, it would mean that all schools would receive a tiny percentage of the SSP funds. Rolling non-competitive funding into LCFF would be the equivalent of dropping a feather into the Grand Canyon. New programs, such as the one I described, may never begin. The SSP grant is unique because it challenges educators to think outside the box. Okay. So last year, 500 schools applied, and 67 planning grants were granted. These 67 grants should have the ability to continue and implement their programs. Thank you for your listening.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. This is for the agriculture education as well as the specialized secondary programs. Please.
My name is Sarah. I'm a mother of 4. That's all that I represent today is my children. My 3 oldest children have participated and are participating in the agriculture program in Elk Grove High School. I have observed firsthand a tremendous change, not only in my children, but the children altogether. I've never lived on a farm. My children have never lived on the farm, but they still get to participate in this wonderful program. My son is now going to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo to participate in agricultural education there. He's received several grants and scholarships for his participation in the program. This program is beyond educational. It provides leadership skills. The meetings that you go to where these kids just take charge is unbelievable. After school on the farm and during school on the farm, these kids put down their devices. They're in poop. I couldn't get my kids to do these things at home, but they just roll up their sleeves and they just go in there and they get their work done. And it's completely run by the kids. There's staff oversight, but this program is just phenomenal. And I couldn't say how disappointed I was to hear that any money would be taken from this program. It's just a great program. Children from all different economical perspectives get to participate, and it's just a wonderful way to learn leadership, hard work, the educational perspective about agriculture, and project management, interestingly. Project management is a big skill here and just gets them ready for college and the next step. So thank you for listening today.
Thank you.
Real quickly, I'd like to address the SSP issue. One of the things that is most rewarding about ag education is kind of this integration of rigorous academics in the ag sciences in those areas, as well as the hands-on. We currently have 1,337 courses approved for A through G. That's 45% of the ag education courses in California. That got its start with an SSP grant at Chowchilla High School. An ag teacher was frustrated about the lack of recognition for the rigor, and several of us encouraged him to apply for an SSP grant. He received it, got some release time to go work with the University of California on a process that would eventually morph into what we have now for this whole recognition system for career tech. Without that incubation money, I don't think we would have the number of career tech courses recognized for UC approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? All right. Questions from the committee? I'd like to start then with the Department of Finance. I think a common theme that seems to run through whether we're talking about the agricultural incentive grants or the SSP or later with the career technical education in general is the concern that that notwithstanding the theory of local control funding formula, that if it's a high enough priority for the local district or the local districts to fund the program that they should, the reality is that if the outcomes of career technical education are not required, specifically funded, and measured, then the school districts are not incentivized to fund the programs, and especially where all school districts throughout the state of California are still trying to recover from 7 years of devastating state budget cuts and to restore those cuts. So what I'm concerned and what I'm hearing, again, whether it's agriculture programs, SSP or CTE programs, is that the reality is that districts are saying we cannot fund these programs unless there is dedicated funding that the state, unless the state identifies these priorities as a statewide priority that should be receiving dedicated funding. I'd like to hear finances respond to that.
Sure. Mr. Chair, Chris Ferguson with the Department of Finance. We would note that under the Local Control and Accountability Plan, that districts must address as one of the included within one of the 8 state priorities, career technical education. We view that as actually a higher level of responsibility to career technical education than we've ever had before, because now districts are being held to an accountability plan that addresses career technical education. Under prior law, this was not the case. So in our view, we actually think that career technical education has been elevated in importance within the accountability plan, and we believe that districts must include that as it is one of the 8 state priorities. They must address this.
I guess I can appreciate that, and I just had a conversation with representatives from the Department of Education on this point yesterday, but the outcomes under LCAP are still being worked out. In the meantime, the maintenance of effort for these programs are coming to an end. Districts are in the process of planning for these programs, and so there's this disconnect, in terms of making this work. And above and beyond that, again, I think districts are coming from a perspective and a culture where they've been primarily judged by their API test scores, and I know that under LCAP, the CTE is going to be elevated or at least be a factor among the 8 statewide priorities. There's still a question as to how exactly that's going to be measured, but I think districts are still coming from a perspective where they're having to rehire teachers and address the larger population that in many situations they're saying that they cannot afford to fund the career technical education or the agricultural programs without specific dedicated funding. I just want to make that comment. Any other, Mr. Nasanti?
Sure, I'd like to comment. This is look, I support the concept of local funding. Local school boards are elected to do that job. That's why we have this great program that Governor Brown called subsidiarity, the concept of local control and local governments determining what's best. But this is just to go back and give some reference, we're asking for $4 million
4.1
outside of the LCFF, correct? Mm-hmm. On top of a grant program. Now, if you remember back when we had discussions on LCFF, the TIG funding, remember TIG funding? TIG funding is almost $1 billion outside of the LCFF, almost $1 billion, and that's for transportation for desegregation of schools. Folks, we stopped busing kids in desegregation before most of these people were born, over 30 years ago. LA Unified School District gets about $400 million a year. It's important to listen to that, $400 million a year outside of LCFF, and we can't find $4 million for this. That's embarrassing. It's almost discriminatory. LA Unified gets $400 million on top of LCFF for desegregation of busing that we stopped doing over 30 years ago, and we can't find $4 million for this program. That's sad. That's a sad commentary on what we're doing here today. And I hope the committee agrees with Senator Salas. And thank you for bringing this forward. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Mr. Ting.
I guess my only question was to finances. While I'm supportive in general of your direction, how would you allow or ensure that agriculture education grants would continue to be spent in this area, because obviously it's very important. It's a very specific area of funding, and we wouldn't want to see these programs go away. So while I think it's helpful to move in this direction, I'm very, very concerned that by not having separate grants, that you would basically allow for the decimation of these programs, which is very concerning.
Ed Hansen, Finance. I think, as you've seen from public comment, there's a lot of passion and enthusiasm for these programs, and I would think and believe that these students, if they brought that type of enthusiasm and passion to their local school board, that those school boards would continue these programs if they're a successful program and it meets local needs and priorities.
But again, I think students should spend time in class, not at school board meetings. I'm sorry. So we have a difference of opinion on that. I appreciate the audience for being here, but not everybody can take the time out of their very busy schedules and lives to attend meetings such as this or school board meetings. So again, I think the students are better served being in class.
And I agree, Assembly Member, that students should be in class. My general point was the focus of the LCFF is local control and local input, and we would believe that that would continue.
And then to further that point, I would also note that the vast majority of expenditures in the area of agriculture education are teacher salaries, which are not funded with the agriculture incentive grant. The average is roughly $15,000 per school site. The teacher salary is certainly more than that, and schools are funding this out of their general purpose funding today, and we believe that it's highly likely that they'll continue to do so on their own.
I would like to ask Finance, it was just a year ago that the legislature declared that the agriculture education incentive grants and the SSP program were high statewide priorities. Why is the governor proposing to eliminate these two particular programs, but not, the list of other categorical programs that still remain that are in the agenda analysis, including Partnership Academy? The list on page 2. Why these two particular programs?
The governor's budget last year, when he introduced the LCFF, included, I want to say, all categorical programs. At the end of the day, in the final budget negotiations last June, the administration agreed at the legislature proposed to carve out the Partnership Academies program, Adults in Correctional Facilities program, and foster care categorical programs. The administration agreed to pull those out of the LCFF. I can only imagine how hectic it is at the final hours of budget negotiations, so there may have been some confusion, but the administration did not agree to pull out the Ag CTE program and the Specialized Secondary program, and thus that's the reason why the governor has a signing message in the final Budget Act directing staff to take a look at these programs and determine whether they should be continued as a categorical program.
I think it's important to remember, too, to distinguish between the categoricals historically, and I believe the governor's concept was these are independent bureaucracies that have to be funded and so on, collapse, give local control. But this is, once again, going back to the agriculture, this is an incentive grant, correct, outside of a categorical. So it's not the same treatment, I don't think it should be, as a categorical, because it's a grant funding, and that's probably the way we should fund. I think the state should not completely walk away from its ideas or its ability to assert priorities into the education system, and by an incentive grant program, that seems to be the best way to do it, and I don't think they should receive equal treatment. Unless, am I missing something here between the categoricals and the incentive grant program?
Historically, the term categorical program has applied to anything that's for a specific purpose that was not traditionally revenue limits. So, I think traditionally we have always referred to it as a categorical program and considered a categorical program.
But do you think it's appropriate to have a distinction, though, between an incentive grant program and a flat-out categorical where streams of funding go to each school district for particular purposes?
We see it as, under the historical definition of a categorical program, is for something that's a specific purpose as opposed to general purpose funding.
Well, I guess I would ask them to make a distinction between the two. That incentive grant is not, I do not believe it's the same as a categorical that goes to all school districts, because it is a matching grant, correct?
Well, all categorical programs, the 40 or 50 that were eliminated, some of those, they didn't go to all school districts. They had to apply for them, similar to applying for the Ag CTE program. So we don't really see that.
That's a legitimate point, yeah. But once again, just so for my own clarification, this is a matching program then from the state?
Yes, and I couldn't list them off the top of my head, but I suspect in the 40 or 50 that will be eliminated, there were some other requirements on those programs that were similar to the Ag CTE program.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chairman. Just if I can once again just make my plug that we funded, I think the finance would be righteous in their argument if they had not set aside $1 billion outside of LCFF for the TIG funding. They would have a much better argument than they do with this.
I guess I just have a brief comment as someone that comes from where LAUSD is a major school district. We actually do have a history of agricultural education in the San Fernando Valley, which used to be the home to one of the largest citrus areas in the state and the country. Pierce College, the local community college in my area, has a strong history of agricultural education as well. And I would just like to lend my voice to hope that we can find this $4.1 million to make sure we keep FFA farming funding available. These young people that spoke today, I think, are a great testament to the success of that program to create future leaders, not only in farming, but throughout our economy, throughout our community, and throughout our state. And very few items that we see before this subcommittee with that small of a price tag have such a huge impact and affect so many students here in our state. So I'm a strong supporter of that, and I appreciate all the young people that came today to testify.
Thank you.
I just saw Assembly Minority Leader Connie Conway joining us. Welcome, Ms. Conway. Would you like to make a statement, or are you just here to observe?
I'm here in support of my colleague and my neighbor, and all of the lives that it will reach if we are able to be successful. So I'm here to support. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think we've received a lot of great testimony, but I strongly believe that we need to, as Mr. Nastandi is indicating, also that we need to fund. We need to demonstrate our state priorities by funding some of these successful programs. We've heard from the kids about how some of the agricultural incentive grants have made a tremendous difference in their lives. I didn't get to talk about more about the specialized secondary programs, but there's a wonderful program in my part of the state, the California Academy of Mathematics and Science, or CAMS. I mean, this school, it's a joint program between the Long Beach Unified School District and the Cal State Dominguez Hills. I believe last time I checked, it was one of the few California high schools in the entire country that made it on the top 20 list of the U.S. News and World Report in terms of the best high schools in the country. And, I believe that we need to put our money where our mouth is. We need to ensure that these programs continue. We need to make sure that these programs are a priority. And for that reason, I am recommending that we reject the governor's proposal to fold the specialized secondary programs and the agriculture education incentive grants into the discretionary funding within the local control funding formula. I would like to entertain any motions to that effect. Motion's been made by Mr. Ting and seconded by Mr. Nastandi. Roll call, please.
Mr. Marsucci?
Aye.
Chavez? Dubovne?
Aye.
Nastande?
Aye.
Ting?
Aye.
That's up.
Thank you very much. That motion passes. We would like to move on then to
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members.
Thank you, Mr. Salas. Thank you for your leadership. Issue number 2, career technical education.